Welcome to the Dusty Muffins, where menopause meets sisterhood and strength. We're three menopause specialists coming together to laugh, share, and empower you through the wild ride of menopause and perimenopause. Whether you're curious, confused, or just looking for real talk, you're in the right place. We're here to answer your burning questions, educate, and advocate, all with a dash of humor and a lot of heart. So pull up a chair and join the conversation. Before we dive in, please remember, while we're doctors, we're not your doctors. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. We encourage you to partner with your own medical clinician to address your unique health needs. This is the Dusty Muffins. I'm Dr. Rebecca Hurdle. I'm a board-certified osteopathic family medicine physician and a Menopause Society certified practitioner. I have a private telemedicine practice, and I see patients in several different states.
I am Dr. Aoife O'Sullivan, a board-certified family physician and Menopause Society certified practitioner, and I see patients through my telemedicine practice here in Oregon and Washington.
I'm Dr. Christine Harkress, a board-certified women's health nurse practitioner and menopause certified practitioner, and I see patients via telemedicine in several states as well. Today, we are joined by Dr. Soum Rakshat, a biomedical engineer turned entrepreneur who has somehow managed to fuse defense technology with sexual health. He co-founded MV Health, a company creating medical devices that literally vibe with your body to help with everything from painful sex and arousal disorders to erectile dysfunction and even period pain. Before this, he built an eye recognition startup that was scooped up by a U.S. defense company, then spent years in management consulting before deciding that this real battlefield worth fighting for is in the bedroom and beyond. Soum's mission is bold: to take the stigma out of sexual health and bring science, innovation, and a little bit of buzz to problems that medicine has long ignored. We cannot wait to dive in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, your career path, we were saying, is truly unique. From eye recognition technology to defense electronics and sexual health devices. What gaps in women's and men's sexual health did you see that made you believe this kind of innovation was needed?
So my background is biomedical engineering, as you guys saw. So the work we do today is not that different to what we did 20 years ago. And the only difference is back then we would work with ophthalmologists, eye doctors, and now we work with urologists, gynecologists, sexual health doctors. So so not much has changed in terms of the actual work we do. We use electronics, and yes, our background before was application of biomedical in defense electronics, but it's very much the same where the doctors tell us this is a physiological problem. Can you figure out a way to solve them using engineering? So how we ended up picking sexual health as the topic for starting our business, especially after our experience in ophthalmology, was we were looking about 15 years ago for what are major patient gaps, and not much was talked about back then, whereas now, luckily, society has moved on significantly. We talk about menopause, prostate cancer, ED, obviously, period pain, etc. But 15 years ago, hardly anyone did. There wasn't any awareness in the public. So the only knowledge was within the medical community with specialists, not even general doctors, but specialists in sexual medicine. So we were very lucky that when we reached out to the clinical entrepreneurship program, which is part of the National Health Service here in the UK, the professor who runs that is a urologist. And he said, this is the biggest challenge that you would never hear about back then, but has a huge impact, affects every single person multiple times in their lives. And anything that can be done to create solutions would be a big plus. So that's kind of how it started. It wasn't something we were aware of as outsiders. And then, and it wasn't that we decided we're going to quit our jobs and start this right away. We spent a few years just looking at what people within our family and friends struggle with. And when we started asking these questions, then we got to see the answers surface up, like pain after childbirth, or even difficulty walking due to dryness and atrophy after menopause. But no one said these things aloud. No one, unless you asked them, or how many people had hysterectomies. Again, no one talked about, unless either you knew them very closely or you asked them, tell me, all the sexual health issues you've had, because this is something we want to solve if enough people have it. Because there wasn't really any knowledge of how big the market was publicly. Like, for example, if you said we want to create solutions for menopause, then people would say, but it's just part of life. Why do you need to solve it?
Right.
That's what the feedback would have been. Outside the sexual medicine medical community, most people would say, what do you have to solve? There's nothing to solve. It's just aging. Or even something as significant as prostate cancer, most people wouldn't have exams. Most people wouldn't know that they have cancer.
Yeah.
So the challenge was no one talked about it. No one expected it to be a big issue. Everyone said sex is niche, which is very silly, both from a pleasure and medical perspective. If we stopped having sex, we as a human species would stop to exist.
Right.
So
Right.
it's as significant as food. So we always think of food and sex as the closest things. Yes, you can have food to survive, but you have food to enjoy and, for the love of life. And similarly, yes, you could have sex just for the purpose of reproduction, but you would want to have sex for pleasure and recreation. And similarly, without food, we die, and without sex, our species would die. So it's just so fundamental and so significant. So it is very odd that at least back then, everyone outside the very small group of specialists thought that anything to do with sex, whether it's pleasure or medical, was a niche topic that didn't affect anyone.
Yeah.
We have come a long way.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that aha moment was more like urologists and sex medicine specialists coming to you saying this is an issue, and then, going out and specifically asking the questions. Struggling with mood swings, low energy, weight changes, or feeling dismissed about your hormones? You're not crazy. You're in midlife. I'm Dr. Rebecca Hurdle, board certified osteopathic physician and certified menopause practitioner. And at Osteopathic Midlife Health, I offer personalized concierge telemedicine for women in multiple states, helping you navigate perimenopause and menopause with expert care focused on hormones, weight, sleep, libido, and more. My approach blends evidence-based medicine with a deep understanding of longevity and precision midlife health, because this phase isn't just about getting by, it's about thriving for decades to come. So visit www.osteopathicmidlifehealth.com and let's build your roadmap to lasting vitality.
Yeah, because what we realized, if you don't ask, at least back then, no one talked about it. You have to ask people.
Even now.
Well, now hopefully there is a bit more awareness, like, big celebrities talking about prostate cancer, or menopausal dryness, and that gives people the permission almost to talk about it openly. Whereas most men don't really want to have a prostate exam because they're scared of, someone inserting something in their rectum. So, whereas if they realize that, there was a recent news about an Olympian called Chris Hoy, who at the age of 45, and he's one of the most fit people, was diagnosed with prostate cancer and was given, I think, 4 years to live. So then people realize, actually, if that can happen to one of the most healthy Olympians who, is super fit, exercises, eats well, then it can happen to anyone. And getting tested early is so key towards increasing, a successful post-cancer survival.
You really have to admire people who will, release that information about their personal health just to help other people.
Yeah, it is. It's intimate. Things are very difficult, and we as clinicians, and who have treated, at least Aoife and I have treated men before, in family medicine. And so, when we ask those questions, you have to be very specific about drawing those questions out, especially I think as female clinicians too, when we're asking about erectile dysfunction, or a prostate pain, rectal pain, urinary urgency frequency, those types of things, pelvic floor, just as much as we need to ask our female clients and patients, is there pain with intimacy? And, we really have to dive deep into there, because most of our patients say that no one has ever asked them about their intimacy and sex. Is it painful? Is it pleasurable? Do they use vibratory devices? That it's okay to use them, because there still is, especially I would say in our, somewhat of our older population, they still feel like they shouldn't have to use that, because, if they have to use that, then something about them is broken.
And it's a generational thing, definitely. I mean, my patients, I don't do primary care anymore, but it's only a year since I quit. And my patients in their 70s, 80s, 90s would have been mortified to talk about the prostate or the vagina or the vulva, So you're right. You really, I think in this younger generation who are on social media and are active that way, they're much more likely to bring it up with you. But our older patients, they really won't. I mean, you might get the odd unicorn who will, but you do have to ask these questions.
Definitely.
And I think too, there's so much stigma, just about, sex toys in general, that I think that for our older patients, which we all have lots of older patients who, come from the era where you didn't use lubrication. So figuring out how to use lubrication is challenging, and maybe, vaginal estrogen just still isn't cutting it. And so to have a medical device, I think at least takes some of that stigma of the, I got a sex toy for pleasure. Can you explain how the targeted vibration helps with pelvic pain and with lubrication and arousal, and why this is another tool in the toolbox for all patients, but in a way that might entice some of our older patients who just feel a little awkward about having a toy?
Yeah. So we are very lucky that vibration as a therapy has the most amount of published clinical literature. So the first time it was used is in the late 1800s. And after that, I would say the next 50, 60 years was purely from a medical perspective. It only started to get traction in pleasure maybe in the 60s, and then slowly gain more traction in pleasure over the decades, to the point that by the time we started, most people assumed vibrators were purely toys, and there wasn't that much awareness that the most of the history of vibrators were all medical. So we were very lucky that we started with huge amounts of clinical evidence. So for example, 100 hertz of frequency of vibration is very effective for improving blood flow. And that improvement of blood flow improves lubrication, erection, arousal, pain relief, etc. And it's not just a genital thing. You would use a vibration device like a Theragun if you have back pain. So it's actually very, it's very common. It's very easy to prove scientifically. It has enough evidence. It's very obvious in terms of the correlation between fingers, which is massaging an area, which is what pelvic flow therapy would be, with vibration, which is massaging an area, to do the same, to achieve the same outcome. So,
can I ask you a question about the 100 megahertz, just out of curiosity? Like for the legato that has 16 intensity levels, what is 100? Is that one?
No,
Or
so the intensity levels is the amplitude. It means so you can think of it as how loud it is, but in this case, how strong. But the vibration is the frequency. It's, how many times. You could think of it as like if you were using fingers, how many times would you rub that area in a minute? So maybe you would rub it, 60 times a minute. So that's the frequency. And amplitude, which is the intensity, simply means, if you're really sensitive, you would use something very low strength. And if you need a lot of stimulation, you would increase the strength. But the frequency stays the same.
Okay. That
So
makes
the fundamentals are really easy in the sense that vibration's proven. We as a team of researchers are not trying to prove vibration is effective. What we are trying to do is put them in the right shape that adapts to the anatomy part that it needs to deliver the vibration accurately. So that's what we do as materials in material science and electronics. Say, for example, is very malleable and it bends like fingers, and the patient can use it themselves on their vaginal wall instead of having to rely on, going to a therapist. And the ideal outcome is they go to a therapist to get the initial training, then they take the device home, use it 3 times a week for 12 weeks, and then they go back. And why that's better is because in most cases, the therapists don't have enough time to see the patient 36 times.
Right.
Also, the patient doesn't have time. So even if it's covered by insurance, which in many cases it isn't, even if it is, they simply wouldn't have time to go 36 times for therapy.
Or get covered. It's not going to get covered for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So that's where the device comes in. Is they get a training either telemedicine or in person. They know exactly how they can use it. Also, they can feel where the pain is and be as gentle and as slow as they want. Whereas a therapy session would be time limited. So, they could spend a long time slowly building up in pelvic pain, for example, or prostate pain generally, slowly building up the vibration, the intensity. Maybe they might even just start with pressing the area without any vibration, then slowly vibrate. But the fundamentals are the same. Is you apply vibration, help increase blood flow. That helps with all the other issues.
So the devices we know that they're proven medically, the vibration therapy. And so your company is, hey, we have these, our goal is then to have a device that's affordable and that can help a multitude of different anatomies, right? Because not everyone's anatomy is the same.
Correct. And the affordable, accessible piece is so important. So so we got all of our devices on FSHSA, which is helpful for a certain percentage of the population, not all. Then we got all of our devices on Veterans Affairs. So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
That took 4 years.
So I thought I was like, oh my goodness, how on earth did you do that?
So I can tell you how, and it's all thanks to the doctors who work in VA. And it still took 4 years, but one of the biggest issues is erectile dysfunction amongst veterans, and on the female side is pelvic pain. So there were topics that they already were spending money on. And the way they think of reimbursement is, can this solution save money on an existing solution they already spend money on? So that's the piece that is really important, is the business case. Yeah. And obviously the product has to work, and the doctors have to recommend it, but that's part of the story. The big story to them, to the procurement team, is how can it save money, because it's taxpayers' money. How can it save money? And so if you think of Viagra as an example, a tablet would be $17. Even when they buy it wholesale, maybe they're paying say $7. That's still a lot of money if they were giving one tablet a week for 52 weeks. So that's $350. And they might give more than one, right? So just that one comparison makes it really easy. And then what makes it simpler is not everyone can have PDE5 inhibitors because they might have heart issues, blood issues. So then you have two business cases where one, it saves money, two, it makes it more accessible to 100% of the VA population, where maybe currently 60% can get the tablets. And then, the same with pelvic pain. So a good example is if you're a veteran who lives quite outside the city, the nearest center might be 2 hours drive away. And then if you need pelvic floor therapy, you just wouldn't have the time to go. And you won't have access. So, all of these, was a lot of back and forth over many years. But it's part of that goal of how can we eventually make everything free for everyone. So we've been working on a CPT code for a while. It's been 2 years, and I'm confident we'll get it, within another year. Because again, the business case is very strong of solving pelvic pain with devices, whichever, not just ours. The code will be applicable to anyone. A device which can be used at home, which can take pressure off the healthcare system, and just improve, patient outcomes. So that's the long-term goal we have, and it's been 11 years, and we believe we'll be doing this for probably another 11 years, and we have a long way to go getting everything accessible.
Yeah, and telemedicine wise, we know that there is a lack of our pelvic floor PTs, and some of them do telemedicine. So if their clinicians are prescribing a device that they can have then, and it may be a little, or it would give them more access then to these pelvic floor therapists that, they can't get to as well.
Exactly.
And so, I know it may be a little bit more difficult over telemedicine, but I think it's not impossible. And
and that's why all the instruction leaflets we have are designed to be very visual. So it's pictures, and it just explains how you use the device using drawings. So even if you were on your own and you didn't have time to go see a therapist, or you had just a call, you would have just enough information. And this is all created by PT trainers. So the PT trainers wrote these documents. So it's very easy.
And so, after all these years of working your way through this quagmire of craziness, if you could magically redesign the medical system's approach to sexual health, do you have ideas? Like, what would work well? What would you do if you were king?
I think the biggest challenge is the ratio between patients to clinicians is really low. So I think a number that is talked about is 40 million women need some kind of pelvic floor help, but there are only 10,000 PTs. So I think that is such a fundamental problem that, even if we get the reimbursement, which is obviously, really helpful and will make a big difference, there will be a big gap between patients getting the care and not getting care. So I think if there was something we could do, we would be able to encourage more doctors to take sexual medicine as the specialty, to bridge that gap, whether it's PT or gyne, whichever area it is, there just isn't enough. So like AUA, the number I think is maybe 15,000 urologists in the whole US.
So even to incorporate some teaching in medical school, right? To start there. Yeah.
Exactly. So like a lot of, and especially here in the UK, a lot of general practitioners who the primary care doctors you see, they don't have any access to the knowledge in sexual medicine. So
same here.
The first thing they'll say is, I'll just refer you to a specialist. But the problem is the time it will take you to see the specialist might be months.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of things could be, find the right one who knows your area. Like, for example, endometriosis, not every specialist is comfortable with the depth of it. Vaginismus, not everyone is. So I think the biggest positive impact could be more education at the undergrad level, even for doctors, and then more to make sexual health a core part of their curriculum.
And then in some other first world countries, if you've had a baby, you follow up with pelvic floor physical therapy. Like that's part of your healing process. And those countries, they don't see all that stress incontinence and a lot of the issues that we see here in women who've delivered vaginally. And so even something like that, taking
so
care
that
of
we are working on. That piece we're working on. So in the new mom kit, and this is literally an idea which already is executed in France. So we didn't come up with it. It's an age-old idea. So they include pelvic floor devices in the new mom kit. So they'll get nappies, like milk bottles, wet wipes, etc. So it already exists. So we're using something that already exists. And then we want to include the devices in there, which again is kind of like a chicken and egg in the sense that it needs to have a code first, which is why we've been working on the code. Once we have the code, then we can include it. The hospitals are really keen. They know the impact it will have in avoiding pain become chronic pain, which happens too often. So if they have a device and an instruction leaflet, whichever device it is, that will solve most cases. So that bit is very much solvable, and I hope that we're maybe maximum 2 years away from that.
That would be amazing. The code is so important. You're right. Just for our listeners, those baby boxes, some other countries, when you are pregnant and expecting a baby, you are delivered this beautiful big box filled with things that you will need for a newborn baby and for yourself. And even the lid of it, you can use as a baby crib. If you're short on space or you need the baby to be in the room with you, things like that. So just really well thought out. So that's amazing that your products might be part of something like that. That would be incredible. Yes.
We'll get there. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Here in the US, you get a bag of Similac or Enfamil in a bag, and
that's about it. Maybe you'll get a little diaper cream in a little packet.
We're telling you.
I think that is why the code is so important. Because the way the whole hospital system works is if there's a code, they're very happy to include it. It really is not an issue, and they see the value. And it's not their fault that they can't include it if there's not a code. It's just too much admin for them. It's not even a matter of cost. It's a lot of admin for them to include something which is out of pocket, where everything else has a code.
So Soum, can you walk us through just maybe a couple of the devices, like the POCO? Can we talk about the POCO?
So POCO's a compact version of Crescendo. Crescendo, it was our very first device, and it's designed literally to mimic 2 fingers. So it's the width of 2 fingers, and it bends to be able to pinpoint. And POCO's a small version of that, and it's very useful for external stimulation. So, for example, we have a couple of studies with it on vulvodynia, vaginismus, and what most of the doctors who tested them use it for is vibration on the labia, because it's very small, very compact. So they use it to vibrate on the labia. Another good study was on arousal disorder post breast cancer recovery. And again, they use POCO. So POCO is really good because if you just want to externally simulate, you have it and you have a nice handle to hold, in which that bit doesn't vibrate, and then the front bit vibrate and is bendable. So anything external stimulation, POCO is great. Yeah, exactly.
There we go. For our YouTube people, there we go. You'll be able to see that Aoife has it on her.
And be careful, wouldn't, it's not a great, it's a bullet size, right? So some people like to put vibrators in the rectum, but you get a good contraction.
It's
a little difficult to get it out, and those require general surgeons to remove those. So,
yes, but please be careful.
the place that it's really good, obviously the clitoris, but then, your clitoris has long legs. And so the area between the opening of the vagina and the rectum outside the perineum has a ton of erectile tissue there. And so, you can put it inside, right, for the G spot, but often just massaging that area with a bit of vibration, there's enough erectile tissue for pleasure. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like, everybody's focused on the bulb, the top of the clitoris, and not those long legs that run down the labia majora on the outside. So I thought the Poco was pretty good. And that the crescendo is probably a good, like, you're just getting started, whereas the crescendo is more in advance. It's a little bigger.
Correct. And crescendo is really very much for pelvic floor therapy. That's what it was designed for. It's very long, so you can reach any point wherever. Whereas Poco is much more universal, and often a lot of people who've never used any device before, they like starting with Poco.
On that crescendo, can you set the different zones to different intensity in there?
You can, but for that you need the app. So the app is free. Again, and it has no login, nothing. You just download it and you connect, and then you can set each of them. But it's a bit complicated, especially if you're not very technical. It's, my parents wouldn't be able to figure it out.
You'd be surprised what your parents.
It's like going crazy all on its own.
It's because
the app, because if you are disabled, you can control it by the app. You can control it. You can have your partner control it. So I think that the app is pretty cool.
And you can also get we made a physical remote, which is like a very simple version of the app, but it has big buttons. It's great for dexterity issues. So the physical remote is really good.
That's so
legato. Rebecca, you have mine's recharging. It's
I have it. So for those listening to us on the podcast, you can see this on our YouTube. So yes, tell us about
so legato is such an interesting product because we never knew there was a need for something like this till we made Tenuto 2, and Tenuto 2 was designed for ED. Yeah. But the front part of Tenuto 2 has 3 very powerful motors, which we later found out from menopause specialists that their patients were using it by holding the base and putting the front on the labia to create arousal, because they didn't want to insert anything at all, nothing. Yeah, they had atrophy or dryness and they didn't want to insert anything. So they were using a device which was designed for something completely different, and they had repurposed it. And it's only then that we realized we need to make something dedicated, which just adapts and vibrates the labia externally without going in. That's how Legato came about. So we never had it in our roadmap. There was no one had ever told us that you should make this vibrator for labia. It just doesn't exist. This concept had never existed, and we would have never known that we should be making it till people started using Tenuto on their
labia. It sounds like you're constantly adapting based on patient feedback, which is wonderful.
And this is cool because for both, if you have a male and a female partner too, so penetration and even like climaxing at the same time, might be an easier way, or around a male as well, right, at the base.
So we made the gaps really big so that you can keep it on during intercourse. Whereas if we made it too small, you'd have to stimulate yourself, then remove it. Whereas the feedback we got is they need constant stimulation throughout intercourse, constant external stimulation throughout intercourse. So we made the gap big enough for penetration.
Yeah, and the feel of it's really nice. I would just say the feel of this is really nice. So for males, females, I mean, it's really, really a nice feel.
So all the silicone is the same. They're all FDA medical silicone, which obviously, is a requirement anyway. And because all the devices are made to the ISO 13485 requirements and they're medical, that allows us to get the reimbursement, VA, etc. So those are all more like prerequisites which are very basic in the sense, as a medical device, you would expect nothing less. And it just means everything is better quality.
Want the Dusty Muffins at your next event? We do panels, live podcasts, and talks that bring the heat, literally. Corporate, CME, or retreats, we've got you. So hit us up at thedustymuffins333@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at thedustymuffins.
Is a clitoral suction vibrator in your future?
Not in our current path, because we don't have any expertise in it in terms of suction. So suction is, there isn't any literature, clinical literature. If we did start working on suction, we'd have to research it first as how suction can be proven medically to help, which is a much longer journey than using existing knowledge. So a similar example would be microcurrents, which is TENS machines. So there's enough evidence that TENS machines are very effective for pain management. So if you built a device using TENS as a concept, you would still be proving it for your device, but you wouldn't be proving that TENS works. That's already proven.
Right.
Whereas if we make something with suction, one, we don't have the expertise in-house. So our chief medical officer, who's the head of King's Urology, he has been researching on vibration for 30 years. And his first paper was applying a vibrator on the bladder to help patients pass urine who would otherwise need a catheter. So, and this goes back 30 years. And so we have a lot of knowledge in vibration, which is why all the work we do is in vibration. Whereas if we wanted to do something in a different foundation, whether it's TENS or suction or something else, we'd have to look at all the evidence which exists first before we can decide what we can use it for. And the reason is, if we launch a product which doesn't have published clinical papers, then it would be very hard for us to get it through the standard medical processes, the FDA, the reimbursements, etc., which would make it very complicated. It would have to be a consumer device, and it's a very different go-to market to make a consumer device.
Kind of along that same line, are MV Health looking into products to help with period pain and mastitis?
Yes. So those are actually the upcoming products which are coming out in the next 6 months. So we've been working on that for 5 years. All of our products stay forever, which is the sad bit with med devices. But it started with Crescendo. So a lot of our users, because Crescendo has been around for 10 years, have used Crescendo just by bending it and placing it on their lower abdomen below the belly button externally, and using that and vibrating it at a low intensity to get period pain relief. And we've had so much feedback over the years, and people we know, in our work. So we then did a study with Crescendo on period pain, and it was effective while you held it. But it was very difficult to use as a period pain device because you're holding something that's vibrating on your body. So your hand, will be vibrating, and how long can you do it? It just wasn't user friendly. So we saw that from an efficacy perspective, yes, it works. Vibration helps with pain relief. And yes, if you can curve it and place it on the tummy, it will help. But we had to figure out how to make something very slim, so you can stick it, it just sticks, it's an adhesive, body safe, obviously, and then super quiet. So you stick it and and you wear your clothes, you go out to work, and no one can hear anything. And it can last at least 12 hours because, you leave home at say 8 and you come back at 7 or 8, and that, it needs to be still vibrating all the way, because once the vibration stops, the pain comes back. And so it was quite a big list of requirements for us to achieve within a very thin, very small device, which took a lot of iterations. And we're almost there. I think we're less than 6 months away before it can be used by a consumer. So that's the period pain. And the mastitis is just a small version of that. So it's literally the same thing, and you stick it on the breast. And the irony of mastitis is currently, if you ask a midwife and maternity nurse, what should I do about breast pain during breastfeeding? They say, put a hot towel, and that's it. There's no solution. There's nothing you can do. Yep. So, and it's so common.
And it is so painful. It is
so painful. And it's recurrent if you've had it before, like your likelihood. Yeah.
So, the thing is, the things that we're making are not complicated. It hasn't been done. And the reason it hasn't been done is it goes back to the lack of reimbursement codes. Most big medtech corporates are limited to what they can invest in based on what they can sell. And if they can sell it, it means it has codes. So it's a challenge where you need to have enough evidence to ask for a code to be created. But you can't create evidence without building the product first and taking the risk on your own R&D time and money,
right,
to get the product out, do all the regulatory approvals, do all the clinical evidence, then get all the patients, then go to the CMS and say, oh, look, we have all this data with 100,000 patients love it, and it will help XYZ. Then you can request a code. So it's a very long journey, and it's very hard to do for a big corporate where they would have very specific reasons for spending money. Which is the reason why Mastitis doesn't have a device.
Yet.
Exactly.
So that's really close. We're very excited about how close it is. Because once we get to prototype number N that we know is really good, then we go to production. So now we know it's really good. So we are in production. So after it goes to production, we might still have to make changes, and it's just how it is. But it's very close where we'll be able to get it to real consumers.
That's incredible. That is awesome.
If our listeners were remembering one thing, if you wanted to pass along one important thing to them today to take away from this episode, is there anything in particular that comes to mind?
I would say the biggest thing we have seen is most people delay when they see a clinician when it comes to sexual health. People might suffer for years before they tell anybody, their partners, friends, family, seeing a clinician. We've come across patients who suffered for 10 years and then, went to see whether it's dryness or ED or whatever. So I think the one thing which we can't do anything about, but we hope that people would do more of for themselves, is see a clinician sooner when you have an issue, and don't expect it will go away automatically. And I think that can change tackling sexual health significantly.
Soum, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. Where can our listeners learn more about MV Health and follow the progress of your ongoing studies?
So everything is on MV Health. So MV is basically medical vibration, very simple. So mv.health. We have a whole section called clinical evidence where we constantly update. So we now have 18 published papers, including one in Nature, which we're very excited about. And then we have more papers, all the time. By the end of the year, we should have 21. We're academics, so we love, having publications. But so people can read our research. Also, we always talk about other work that's happening, other research coming out. Like there's a really lots of great work from Cedars-Sinai on the use of vibrators, generally with Dr. Alexandra Dubinskaya. She's been one of the leaders in getting vibrators into medical jargon, which, even 5 years ago, no one took seriously. Lots of good stuff happening. But it's mv.health. That's our website.
All right. Awesome. All right, y'all. Well, you heard it here. Cutting edge science, real results, and breaking down taboos in sexual health. So don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, and keep thriving in midlife.